A high school senior in Utah was subject to public shaming, a lot of it from across the country, because of the dress that she wore to prom. Watch.
A single post with a one-word caption and 4 photos changed everything.
I was accused of racism, cultural appropriation. I didn't mean any harm or racist intent.
That's Keziah Dom, and the dress she wore is called a chai pao. It is commonly worn in China. In response to the photos, Twitter user Jeremy Lamb tweeted this, quote, "My culture is not your bleeping prom dress," whatever that means, but his tweet received almost 180,000 likes.
Howdy y'all, welcome back. We appreciate y'all joining us on this journey again. We hope you enjoyed the first video. If you did, and that is the case, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. So we want to talk about in this video is the clip that just played immediately before us coming on, which is about the idea of cultural appropriation. And honestly, it's spread throughout culture to the point where it pervades nearly every facet of our lives. I'm kind of curious, Eddie, what your thoughts are on that clip in particular about the prom dress, and kind of how you've seen this phenomenon just proliferate out of control, especially within the last decade or so.
Well, the important thing to remember when it comes to cultural appropriation is that it's really just a strain of cultural Marxism. And basically the whole concept of it is in the weird hierarchy of grievance that is cultural Marxism. If you can claim oppression over something, anything, it doesn't matter how ridiculous it is, in the mind of someone who has adopted that philosophy, you gain moral superiority across the board over anyone who disagrees, or even over people within your group who may or may not agree with you. So it's kind of a power play. And that's one thing that's important to keep in mind when it comes to a lot of these terms that leftists like to introduce to our lexicon. It's not so much about the concept itself, although some of them will get wrapped around the axle about it. It's more about the concept of power. They want to be able to claim some sort of a high ground, no matter what it is. And in this case, it's with regard to cultural appropriation, which in my mind, it's what really blows my mind is the fact that ostensibly well-educated people will subscribe to this mindset that you can own an intangible part of a culture that spans back thousands of years, thousands of millennia, for as long as people have been on this planet. Culture has always been changing. The fact that you can try to distill it into a single set of clothes or an accent or a type of music, distill it and then hold on to it tightly like it's a prized possession, it's a mind-boggling concept. And there's a reason it's only just now becoming an issue on the national scene, and that's because it's something that most people automatically assumed was absurd. Cultural appropriation, what I like to refer to it as, is cultural cross-pollination, because that's really what it is. It's simply cultures building on the best aspects of each other and building towards something better. It's a synergistic phenomenon, and only recently have we come up on this concept where all of a sudden you can't participate in someone else's culture unless certain stipulations, which are always arbitrary, by the way, are met. So I wanted to kind of throw it back to you and see in your brushes with cultural appropriation, or however it's defined in this day and age, what are some of those stipulations that you see people try to ascribe to, and how do you try to combat that notion?
Well, a lot of the issues around cultural appropriation is mainly a perceived claim of cultural exclusivity, and that has nothing to do with cultural appropriation, but people are quick to conflate the two. For example, people will say that if you act a certain way that you're adopting someone else's culture, but let's think about what makes America great to begin with. What makes America great is the fact that we are a melting pot, right? And the overall term of melting pot means that we all have worked and blended ourselves into one great nation and one great culture. And I find it unnerving the lengths people will go to say, oh, well, this is something unique to X culture or Y culture. This is why you can't participate in that. And it's almost as if people have an inherently visceral reaction to people who honestly appreciate other cultures. So in the case of the prom dress, this girl Ostensibly, from all indicators, she really liked the culture and the beauty behind this dress that she wore to prom. And instead of people saying, "Well, that's great that this girl from European descent actually finds beauty in something that comes from another culture," but instead the reaction was overwhelmingly negative, in that people automatically ascribed some sort of negativity to her gesture, which obviously, for the most part, it seemed to be in good standing, right? What's unfortunate, though, is that all throughout culture, to your point, there have been things that other cultures have done that we've adopted in our modern day lives. For example, if you look at even sunglasses that we all wear, and we're both in Texas, we get over 300 days of sunshine every year, right?
Texan by the grace of God, yes.
Exactly. But, we don't think about where our items come from. Sunglasses honestly have their origins in 12th century China. This is by glasseshistory.com. And the old Chinese in the 12th century, what they did was they actually took a piece of quartz and they smoked it and put it in a crude frame in order to shield their eyes from the heat of the sun and the glare of the sun, right? Do you think about that? But you don't see people going around acting offended at the fact that people are using sunglasses, especially not the Chinese people who can be credited with inventing them. You also think about things like even something as arbitrary as roller skates, right? We've all been roller skating. I know you and I, we used to test our mettle on the roller skating rink on a nearly weekly basis. But roller skates themselves actually were an invention from Belgium in 1760, when an inventor decided he wanted to wear those to a party he was going to in London. The result was not what he intended. He actually met with severe self-harm as a result of using this piece of apparel that he devised. But still, that being said, there's so many examples of things that we do here in America that were done somewhere else first, and that's not a bad thing if you choose to adopt them. I think with the excoriation that people usually get from ascribing to different parts of culture, I think it's rooted in the notion that people are doing this to be inherently negative, right? There's an assumption that people want to use this piece of culture in a form of denigration or disrespect towards a person. A lot of the Loyalism that comes from people who take issue with the culture that they deem was appropriated is largely stems from a place of honestly hatred and intolerance. And I kind of want to get your take too on how some of the issues around cultural appropriation, as they've spread throughout our culture, how they've honestly kind of cheapened that which makes us such a beautiful entity as the United States of America.
Well, yeah, what you just said is spot on. It's a projection, and it's always done out of malice. Whenever I see somebody adopt, and I say this loosely, whenever I see somebody who has been influenced by a culture not native to their own, I always take it as a positive. That is something that ethnocentric people do not do. Ethnocentrism is a concept where you believe that your culture is only your culture, and that everyone should basically stay in their lane. Culture is not spread around in little boxes like a waffle, where you could only stay within your one group, and if you stray outside those lines, you're automatically out of bounds. It doesn't work that way. And the most important thing to remember is that when someone is projecting something on you, it's always incumbent upon you to take it the right way. And that's one of my criticisms about the girl who wore the prom dress. And I get it. She's a teenager. She's trying to enjoy prom. She wore it for attention. What girl doesn't wear a prom dress for attention? But she kind of reacted in a way that added a little bit of fuel to the fire. And the best way to avoid that is I'll end with this one example. I follow the NBA a lot. We always talk about our San Antonio Spurs, but one prominent NBA player, Jeremy Lin, I believe it was about a year or so ago, he was upbraided by a former NBA player named Kenyon Martin. And Kenyon, who is African-American descent mostly, from what I can tell, was taking issue with the fact that Jeremy Lin had put dreadlocks in his hair. Now, Jeremy Lin, in case you can tell from his name, he is of Asian descent. And this is something that Jeremy has done with his hair for a long time. He's worn at least 50 different hairstyles since I've been keeping up with him from a variety of cultures. So it wasn't Jeremy just singling out his particular culture and going after it. But the funny thing was, Jeremy, when he heard about Kenyon's disgruntlement, he didn't take it the wrong way. He didn't take it personally, and I think it's because he was Harvard educated. But he came back with the most well-written rebuttal that I'd ever seen in my life, and he basically called out Kenyon for having Asian characters tattooed on his person, and ended with, basically celebrating that both could appreciate each other's cultures and be free to do so in our society. And that's the beauty of it. Like you said at the top of the show, America is a melting pot. We have to bring our cultures together and make something better out of it. Make America great again. Everybody thinks that was just a cheap little slogan. No, that's what America has always been about. It's about making ourselves greater because of everyone around us. You can't make yourself greater if you just stay in your lane. You have to gather from different cultures around you, different influences. So bottom line for me, celebrate each other's culture. There's no such thing as cultural appropriation. You do not own objects of a particular culture unless it's an item of clothing, in which case you should probably give the other person the shirt off your back and see if it fits them. But do you have any other closing thoughts on that? Because honestly, we could wax on and on with example after example. But for me, at the bottom line, it's just have respect and have fun with it, because that's what culture is all about: cross-pollination.
Right. Well, there's an age-old saying, basically, to echo your point, there's an age-old saying, it is that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And
Yes,
so when
sir.
you address the idea of a cultural appropriation, what you first have to do is filter it through the intent of the person. It is very clear when someone takes a piece of culture and uses it negatively. But for the majority of good-hearted people out there, that's not the case. And I think it is our onus and it is our duty to go and actually be able to discern between, is someone using this to hurt me, or is honestly someone using this to give me accolades and to shine a light on my culture and show the world how much they appreciate it. So as long as you filter everything through that sieve, you'll be okay. But to inherently have a knee-jerk reaction that says, this is cultural appropriation, this is bad, someone's using my culture, this is mine, no one else can have it, it's counterproductive to what makes us great as a country. And I think it's counterproductive to, honestly, our day-to-day lives. So,
And actually, to dovetail on that point too, even if they do use it negatively, so what? The great thing about America is the First Amendment. One of the great things about America is the First Amendment. You have freedom of expression. You have freedom of speech. Some people can choose to use it positively or negatively. Whether somebody uses a particular item of culture as a positive or a negative, that does not give you the right to claim ownership thereof. It's not a question of, okay, most people do use it either inadvertently or positively. But even if someone's using it negatively, that's their problem. And if they can't appreciate your culture, then they're the ones that are tearing themselves down, because they're obviously missing the richness of what that culture has to offer and how they can use it to better their lives and further awareness about that particular culture. And so instead of coming back from a position of projecting power on somebody and trying to be intentionally negative in your response, spin it around and use it for a positive thing. Point out how it can be a positive thing. Point out how it was useful back in the day, or what it was used for back in the day. Maybe that person will change their mind. Maybe they'll keep on being a jerk about it. But at the same time, you can't project on them the concept that they are somehow stealing your culture, because that's not even remotely possible. We're talking about fantasy at that point.
absolutely. So again, we want to keep these videos brief. We can wax very loquacious, as we said in the first video. So we're hustling. Believe us, we're hustling. We're going to find ways to make this content, continue to make it compelling for you, continue to give you something else to think about, something else to chew on. Eddie and I both have marketing majors from Texas A&M University. So we definitely want to give a shout out to our alma mater. But we also realize that we want to give you the issues of the day and we want to get out. But we also want to give credit to our subscribers and people who have given us positive feedback. So we do appreciate y'all. We consider y'all our shareholders on this journey. We want to continue to deliver content that is compelling and that makes you think. So we appreciate you joining us on this journey once again. We look forward to seeing you again next time for episode 3. And Eddie, you know what to do at the end of the very video, right?
Thanks and gig 'em.
Thanks and gig 'em. Y'all take it easy.
The first revolution is when you change your mind about how you look at things and see that there might be another way to look at it that you have not been shown. The revolution will not be televised, and be no rerun, brothers and sisters. The revolution will be live.